thank you, first and foremost. I appreciate you taking the time. Just can you tell me your name and what you do?
My name is Ben Harder, and I'm the owner of Den Hill Farm and Fungi. We are a local mushroom farm that cultivate commercial and local varieties of mushrooms and grow them year-round and sell retail in our local community. We also grow medicinal mushrooms and edible mushrooms.
Cool.
I got obsessed with mushrooms when I first saw them growing on logs, and it was like a waste product, a log that I just see as trash or firewood, and it had, hundreds of dollars worth of mushrooms growing out of them, and it just blew my mind. It's like this mushroom is taking something that is trash and making something that is a high value crop to a farmer like myself.
And when did you start? Did you start foraging or did you start farming?
Yeah, I started farming back in college, and doing that, it was a slow, sustainable farming, learning about how food systems work. And then I was introduced to mushrooms through I don't know if I need to get into that, but yeah, I did mess it up. But yeah, do you want me to get into that, or is it too long? Yeah. Okay. I was introduced to shiitake mushrooms through a Appalachian Trail thru-hiker that was trying to sell his mushroom logs to finish the Appalachian Trail. And so he came by the farmer's market and showed me pictures on his little flip phone, and that blew my mind. And I went by to his house after, and I bought his logs, and it really just totally changed my conception of mushrooms and like how that I could grow them. I have plenty of trees and could grow them myself at the farm, and it was all low-tech farming. Shiitakes and logs is not a high-tech farming style.
Right. No, it's not. Well, and I was going to say too, is I never, I'll talk to gardeners. People will start that the gateway crop at the farmer's market is eggs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I call it gateway crops, but like the beachhead. Like,
yeah, I did eggs.
And then
you mean a customer.
In terms of customers, like first thing that they'll come and try, like for mushrooms, it feels like shiitake is the beachhead, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So when somebody first starts getting into mushrooms, what do you see as their journey, and what's the next step they should take?
Yeah, so I started with shiitakes, and then from there moved into oyster mushrooms because they're so dynamic and they're creamy and tender and sweet like a morel. I think morels are kind of overrated. And so the oyster is a great beginner mushroom because it's so creamy and mild and sweet. And then from there, I think going into lion's mane, because it's so rich and lobster crab-like, I think that that's a great second mushroom to follow up as you begin into edible mushrooms.
Where are the explore? Like, do you see when you at the farmers markets over the years, like, do you see certain types of people that buy certain types of mushrooms?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the staple is like, people will be like, I don't like mushrooms, and they don't like portobello and button mushrooms, which I totally get. I don't really like them that much either. They're really funky, and they don't have great texture. They're kind of slimy. And so I think that a lot of people that think they don't like mushrooms, they just don't like portobello or button. And so I think that those people are more likely to buy shiitake or oyster, but are scared of lion's mane because it doesn't look like anything they've ever eaten before. It looks like a coral reef or some type of weird thing.
Yeah, it's really cool. So like, that's what I find so interesting. I feel like 5 years ago, there were no mushrooms on the shelves of the grocery stores other than portobello and butt.
Definitely.
Like, what the hell's been happening in the past 10 years?
Yeah, I guess there's a mushroom revolution going on, and that centers around this low-tech farming style that we still do, where you don't completely sterilize the media, you pasteurize it. And that allows people like myself to grow hundreds of pounds of mushrooms using like a boiler and steam to pasteurize the wood media. And we don't have to actually sterilize it and grow them in a lab like it's traditionally done. And that's what's changed over the last 10 years is this ultra pasteurization method that people like myself do.
So tell me about that, because I think of milk, right? Pasteurized, ultra pasteurized. Is that like a certain temperature? Like, what's the process to get the media ready?
Yeah, the blocks are bagged and then cooked in the bag at 200 degrees, which is boiling essentially, for 4 hours. So like once the internal temperature of the block reaches 200 degrees, you have reached pasteurization. And at that point, I don't know the exact percent, but like 99% of the pathogens are dead. And it allows the mushrooms to get the jump on the media and colonize it quickly. Even if there are some pathogens that are left behind, they are ahead and can survive without that, with that presence being there. And so,
does it matter what media it is, or like the different?
Yeah, the more wood the media is, the easier it goes, and the less competition there is. The higher nitrogen there is, which is like a fertilizer, for any crop. The higher the nitrogen, the more competition there is, because bacteria and mold and those kind of things thrive on heavy nitrogen.
Cool. And then you said wood is the medium.
Wood is like the core of it. And we do like a 50-50 blend with like a hull is like oat hull or soy hull and wood. And those 50-50 blend allows it to be like high nitrogen, but not like too high that the mushrooms can't thrive. And so that's kind of it. But if you go less, it's easier to grow things, but they're not as prolific. So it's like a risk reward thing.
Now tell me about the I guess I'm going to say 3, but tell me if there's more than that. So, but the 3 main forms of getting mushrooms.
Cultivation. Yeah. Those kind of things. I hate to say that, but what are the 3?
I would like trying to get a,
yeah.
It's like you can either go out and forage mushrooms. Not at scale, right? That's on a scale for farming.
Yeah.
We'll do that though. It's great.
Yeah.
What you see right behind you here, logs or A-frame, different styles of putting them on wood outdoors.
Yes. Gotcha. All right, cool.
Is there a fourth?
No, I was just like at first I was like, are you talking about like buying them? Is that the third one?
There's a cultivation.
Yeah. Or, yeah. Huh. I mean, I guess it's just getting or selling mushroom, cultivating. I mean, man, that is a trip. Yeah. Finding, consuming, retailing.
The 3 ways that you can get mushrooms.
I guess. Yeah.
3 ways.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. There's 3 ways that you can get mushrooms. 1, you can go out and forage them, but that's really difficult because the weather has to be perfectly timed up with the season and the variety. Just like morels this year, it was very dry in April, and we didn't have a very good morel crop, at least in this area. And so then it's just next year, you got to hope for the best. And so then there's cultivation and using like low-tech methods like log production like this behind me. And the log production is a lot easier because it's not done in a lab and it's more simulating nature, but having some control like traditional farming outside. And then there's finally lab production, which we've been doing over the last few years. That is a high risk, but also high reward. And so we're dealing with the perfect environment for them and the perfect nutrients for them, but it's also the perfect nutrients for competitors. And so if it's not completely clean and everything's completely perfect, then it can be a disaster and you have lots of contamination. So that's like the 3 different methods.
What would you say is something that most people don't know, like, are the biggest misconception about mushroom farming?
Well, I think the biggest misconception with mushroom farming is that they're all foraged, or people believe that all of our mushrooms are foraged at the farmer's market. When they come up to see me, they're like, where did you guys find all these? And all that kind of stuff. Or are these edible is another thing. It's like, no, we're just selling poisonous mushrooms, farmer's market. No, it's like, anyways, I think they don't know that mushroom farming is possible and is something that people can do in like a garage setup, I guess is maybe it.
Just think that's so funny.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, yeah.
Weird question to ask somebody. All right. Well, let's get on to the article too, which is, what is the relationship between trees and mushrooms?
mushrooms and trees have evolved to have an interesting relationship because mushrooms can't move and they rely upon water and the seasons. And so trees are also stuck, but they have more mobility in the sense that they can track the sun and create their own energy, but they don't have all the nutrients they need. And so mushrooms and trees have evolved to communicate and trade nutrients that each one is lacking or demanding in their environment. So the mushrooms team up with the trees to find the best nutrients and trade for micronutrients and stuff that they need in their specific environment or niche. And so that's allowed them to evolve together.
You're doing great. What would you say is like the exchange? What's the symbiotic relationship?
Yeah.
One or the other give?
Yeah. The tree gives the mushroom carbohydrates and sugars, and through their phloem that is actually grown together and become an extension of the tree. And then the mushrooms give the tree their micronutrients and other specialized enzymes and stuff that the tree is lacking. And the mushroom can also act as like a protector of the tree and create nutrient or chemicals to fight off competitors and other whatever, I don't know. I can't. Invaders. Yeah.
Tell me about some of the relationships, like some of the woods that do really well, like trees and mushrooms that have very interesting relationships.
Yeah. Like living or after death or both. Okay. Yeah. Well, a popular mushroom today is the turkey tail mushroom. And that is because it is extremely medicinal and it's becoming one of the most medicinal mushrooms in the world. And that's because it actually tones and strengthens your immune system, like taking your immune system to the gym. And it also has anti-cancer properties for fighting cancer. And that mushroom is very exciting, but also the most common mushroom in North America. So they are extremely prolific and growing everywhere. We have some growing just on the other side of this tree, just because we cut down logs and never inoculated them, and they moved in and colonized them to break them down. And I think the specific connection between trees and mushrooms is that mushrooms break down carbon and waste material and break it down and make it available for plants to use. And that's like the evolutionary thing. You might have heard that we would be drowning in carbon and leaf matter and wood if there weren't mushrooms breaking them down. And just like trees would be starving without mushrooms breaking down nutrients and making it bioavailable.
Okay, so while trees are alive, the mushrooms help keep them alive. And then once they die, they eat them.
Yeah. It is different species.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. It wouldn't be like the same species.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's something interesting.
So if you want me to answer that formally,
yeah. Sit there and be like,
yeah,
fucked up.
Yeah.
Ants with aphids, right? They like farm them. So mushrooms farming trees.
Yeah. No, maybe.
So it's not mushrooms, it's fungi.
Yeah, it's like fungi, I guess, because like, I know, right? The mice. It's insane. Yeah. Because mycorrhizal mushrooms aren't like a edible mushroom. They're like a soil fungus that lives its entire life and then it's like the fungi, mushroom producing fungi eat the waste. I don't know quite how that
that's what I'm saying. I was just
breakdown is
the dust, like pulling out a pile, you see all that white stuff. It's just mycorrhizal fungus.
Yeah, but I don't quite know what the break is and if that's always true. But yeah, I can answer.
Oh no, I get super nerdy about this. But it's so funny to me.
Yeah.
So here's the question I really.
Yeah.
Are ants really the shepherds of the forest or mushrooms?
Mushrooms by far the shepherd of the forest because they allow everything, both nutrients and growth, to be regulated and checked. And I think the economy of nothing is wasted is based on mushrooms. And it's, you know, the biomass of the tree is grown in, and then mushrooms come and break it down. But at the same time, as trees are growing, they're having connections with other mushrooms, mycorrhizal mushrooms, that are feeding the tree and helping the tree grow. So they kind of are the check and the balance for growth.
I kind of like that. I mean, because in general, too, if you have to look up to any kind of a plant or animal in a certain way, though, like what mushrooms do, it is all nose to tail, sustainable, season.
Yeah.
Right? It seems like it's all those things.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And before I don't want to take up too much of your time, though, but I wanted to make sure of what are some, I'm going to call it fun facts, but like, can you tell me about like what was with the washing thing?
Oh, yeah. So there are a few things, misnomers that people conceive with mushrooms is, I think the conception of portobello and button, mushrooms are grown in manure and other compost, that they're dirty and need washing. And maybe that's true for them. But for our mushrooms and forage mushrooms, you don't want to wash your mushrooms. You want to trim off any dirt or material that you don't want to eat. And that would primarily just be wood or some type of degraded wood that you're cutting off. You can even shake out or blow off any bugs, but the bugs also aren't going to be an issue. But washing them will destroy their moisture content and flood them, fully saturate them, and make cooking them very difficult and not make them as delicious if you saturate them and get them wet. And then also, you want to cook all mushrooms. All mushrooms are not available for your body to digest unless you've cooked them. They have the same compound as crab shells, chitin, in their cells. And so our body cannot break that down without cooking. So salad bar mushrooms, while they are edible and not poisonous, they are not culinarily correct or beneficial for your body in any way.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Wait, why do they put them out then?
I think because of the mushroom mafia. But yeah, that was, I don't know if that was a formal question or not. But oh yeah.
Because maybe it lasts longer when it's sitting out like that, when you don't. I feel like that's every pizza place, every like.
Yeah. I mean, I guess a pizza place is going to cook it on the pizza.
The salad.
Oh yeah, the salad bar. Yeah. No, you're good. Yeah. So there is a group called the Mushroom Mafia that formed from back in the day when New York City was a powerhouse and was all horse driven. They created a lot of manure in the city, and they needed something to do with the manure. So these farmers in Pennsylvania started taking the manure and getting paid to collect the manure in New York City, and then growing portobello and buttons on them in Pennsylvania, and then selling the mushrooms back to the city. And that is what formed the mushroom mafia in the United States. And they control something like 95% of mushroom cultivation in the United States is currently is this Pennsylvania Kennett Square group of mushroom growers. And I believe that they had a lobby and get mushrooms on salad bars, because it's not culinarily correct, but it's another way to sell more mushrooms and get more mushrooms out there. And so I think that's where it stems from. But, you know, their power is waning, and some of them are going more diverse now and not just growing portobello and buttons, and growing shiitake and growing oyster and lion's mane and that kind of thing.
It's a grouping of, it's not just one.
It's not just one farm. Yeah. But it is like some major powerhouse families that, you know, have like 3 generations of mushroom farmers. And it's like our only history of mushroom farmers and cultivation in the United States all stems back to Kennett Square and the mushroom capital of the world. Yeah.
I knew nothing of it. Well, in terms of that too, you are seeing this kind of like this proliferation. Like, is it difficult to get into it? I guess what I should say is I convince people to pay farmers, right? But to do it in their own backyard, because then they have this new appreciation and respect for it. Is it too difficult? Like, if you're a gardener, to add one of these to your backyard?
Yeah, mushrooms are extremely easy to cultivate in low-tech settings like backyard production. And we started out growing entirely low-tech backyard style, cutting these logs. We do workshops and host whatever events that people can come out and get exposed to it. But it's as simple as cutting a fresh tree and then inoculating it with the sawdust mycelium, the roots of the mushroom, into the tree through these plugs that we have behind us. And that allows the mushroom to colonize the log, and then it'll fruit. There's also other mushrooms called wine cap mushrooms. King Strophoria is like their formal name. And they love mulch. And I recommend hairy homeowners all the time, try growing them in your beds or in your perennial landscapes, wherever you have mulch in your yard, because all you have to do is layer the spawn, the mycelium, the roots of the mushroom into the mulch in your yard, and they'll colonize it. And then they fruit when the season is right in the spring and fall, and when there's lots of rain and then it warms up, they'll naturally fruit. So you don't have to do anything besides mix them into your mulch, and you'll have crops in the spring and fall for at least a year or two. So it's very easy, low tech. There's no skill or even upkeep.
Yeah, you can have.
Yeah. Oh boy, getting animated. Yeah.
So last thing I kind of want to do is I want you to tell me about the three again. So I'm going to give you. This is you talking, but I'm going to give you three pairings. So what tree pairs best with a lion's mane? What tree pairs best with oyster mushroom? And I know there's a variety.
Yeah.
You can pick one.
Yeah.
And what tree pairs best with shiitake?
So shiitake mushrooms love oaks, and this is because they're very dense and have a very thick bark on the tree. And this allows them to have lots of space and protection in the log and be able to push their cap out through the bark, which is an important part of their growth cycle to have that. If you have a softer bark, it'll just fall off and not provide them the area to push through the mushroom. Oyster mushrooms like softer wood, like a poplar, and they prefer that kind of looser carbon lineup and allow them to kind of spread out more and be more free flowing. And they don't care as much about the bark. So the poplar has a lighter bark tree. And so lion's mane is interesting that they actually like waste trees for us, like the black walnut, which is a poisonous tree in landscapes. The lion's mane like to eat the black walnut, which is a cool way to use a harmful tree to an environment. And the tree of heaven tree also is another tree that is now an exciting lion's mane growth opportunity, and this is because it's quite an invasive species in our area, and to be able to cultivate mushrooms on an invasive tree is a win-win.
I love that. And I do want to also get you to talk a little bit about, when I interviewed you, you had talked about the consciousness of trees and mushrooms kind of being connected, or one extending the other. Can you kind of walk me through your train of thought on that?
Yeah. All right. Okay.
What's your philosophy of the forest?
Yeah. Okay. So, sorry. Yeah. And no, you're messing with me. Okay. Mushrooms and trees have a unique relationship that has been debated over the years, and they're an extension of one another and almost seem to be the same consciousness because they communicate together. And almost like comparing them to a blind person with a stick, that their consciousness extends to the end of the stick, just like a tree using the mycorrhizal network that surrounds the tree. It can trade for nutrients, but also find its kin, its relatives in the area, and actually protect and trade with its relatives in the area. So like a mother oak can feed its children through mushrooms and through the mycelial network in the forest. And so there's this symbiotic but almost one consciousness of the mushroom and tree together foraging and collecting and utilizing the resources available.
In what ways that you grow it? In what ways is this sustainable?
Yeah. Well, we start that off better. Log production mushroom log production is more sustainable in the sense that we don't go and cut down trees that are thriving, fully developed trees. We cut down saplings and colonize and grow mushrooms on those. So it actually increases the forest developed state and allows it to reach full maturity instead of, growing out of a clear-cut scenario like our property and not being able to reach its full potential because it's overcrowded. And so that is a benefit to mushroom log production. And then as mushroom cultivation using the mushroom grow bags is more sustainable in the sense that we use agricultural and wood waste and use that to grow our products. The hull of a seed is what we grow on, not the actual seed itself. And so this is something that's just discarded and not used, or used in animal feed as one of the many supplements they include. And so we use that and sawdust from mills and stuff that has been pressed into pellets, but that allows us to utilize waste products to grow. So mushrooms are extremely sustainable in that sense, and also in their water consumption is very low compared to crops or meat.